Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Today we are going to commence with the book study, the first three chapters of Magic, Its Ritual, Power, and Purpose by W.E. Butler. This was, of course, scheduled for yesterday, but I was invited to a gender reveal party. The after party got a bit messy, so I wasn't really in a condition to do this book read yesterday. However, we will do it today. So, peace and greetings to everyone. I hope that you're having a good evening. And we will begin with this text. Awesome possum. Peace, Mia Love. Peace, Atropa. Good to see you. All right, all right. So, lucky for me, this book has no such warning that says that I cannot read it live. So, we should be safe. Ashe to the Order of the Phoenix. Ashe to the Order of the Unicorn. So let's get started. Magic, a classic introduction to the theory and practice of magic. A classic introduction to the theory and practice of magic, in which the aim of the genuine magician is seen to be the realization of that true self of which the earthly personality is but a mask. So that's the point of this book, and according to Mr. Butler, that is the point of magic. You'll find here that a big theme with W.E. Butler and those associated with him, there's talk about low magic and high magic. So to be quite honest, my definition of low magic previously was incorrect. Previously, I stated that low magic was about doing magic to serve your personal needs, right? Doing magic to get money, get sex, to improve health, and all the earthly conditions. That's what I thought low magic was before, working with the Goetia and things like that. And I thought that high magic was the unification of the lower self with the higher self. What I've come to learn now is that all of that is still low magic. Low magic, the graduation of low magic into high magic is when the personality, the lower self, unifies with the higher self, the true self. And then, of course, high magic, and also just say that low magic, in that unification of the lower self with the high self, what that also includes is a certain mastery over elemental influence. Okay? Mastery over elemental influence. Now, to the uninitiated and to people who don't know, that could seem like good luck, that could seem like coincidence control, and that could seem like manifestation. But what's actually happening is that the Magus begins to gather a sympathy with the elemental forces that surround us all, and everything just moves in your favor. Now, that mastery, it graduates. It goes from the elemental influences to the planetary and celestial influences. And once you get to that level, you start to override and bypass astrology. But all that to say, unification with that higher self is the completion of low magic. And then high magic has a lot more to do with influencing and controlling your destiny at large. And this is where we get into, non-existing anymore, non-reincarnating anymore, recalling all of your past lives, opening up your Akashic record, and that sort of thing. All right. So let's move forward. All that to say, this is behind his first statement here, right? A classic introduction to the theory and practice of magic, in which the aim of the genuine magician is seen to be the realization of that true self, realizing the true self, the higher self, of which the earthly personality is but a mask, right? So your incarnation down here is just a mask, not the true self. All right, magic, its ritual, power, and purpose. We're going to do the first 3 chapters, some definitions in a general survey, human personality, the magical thesis. All right. Peace to everyone who is here. Peace, Sirius Suit 888. Peace, Lance Benefield. Peace, Sunshine Chick. Always good to see you. Phoenix Wolfette. Peace, peace. The Electric Rose. Greetings. Yeah, Atropa says, I thought low magic was natural earthly magic and high magic was ceremonial magic. Thanks for the correction. I'm glad I now know the true meaning. Thanks, Travis, for clearing that up. You're very welcome. And it was a big surprise to me as well, you know. And what I enjoyed about that, because to see where I got that from, was reading these books here by Butler, and also from Gareth Knight and more of Dion Fortune. And what I enjoy about that is that it expands my expectations, I guess. You know, for me to think that unification with the higher self was the furthest you can go, I was severely limiting my potential and what magic is all about. Naturally, it goes beyond the self. It goes beyond even the higher self and straight to the soul. And if we recall from Samkhya, we understand that liberation is the process of consciousness realizing itself outside of matter. So that would be the final stage. That would be liberation, right? That would be true enlightenment, which takes place beyond the body, right? Beyond this life. It's not about walking around being holy. It's about truly transcending existence within the material plane. All right, so let's continue. Peace, Ingrid B. ZJ, peace, greetings. We Grow Natural family, good to see you. Corporal Chaos Consulting, peace, peace. All right. So, forward. It is obviously impossible to fully cover such a vast subject as magic in the small compass of these pages. I have therefore attempted to give a general idea of one aspect of the magical art in the hope that this little book may encourage my readers in the serious study of the science of the Magi. Acknowledgements are due to my wife for her help and encouragement, and to Bishop Robert King of the Liberal Catholic Church, and the late Dion Fortune, founder of the first warden of the Fraternity of Inner Light, for the teaching and advice I have received from them. It is fair to add that none of them are to be held responsible for the ideas herein expressed. W.E. Butler, February 16th, 1952. This is an old book. All right. Turn these notifications off real quick. There we go. All right, chapter 1, some definitions and a general survey. In this imperfect world, where it is so easy to misunderstand or to be misunderstood, it is necessary, when writing upon such a subject as ceremonial magic, to define carefully one's terms. But before giving any definition, let us deal with the popularly accepted ideas of magic. By so doing, we may cut away much of the obscuring undergrowth of thought, as one might clear away the tropical vegetation from around some hidden Aztec temple, and so reveal its true proportions and appearance. The simile is apposite, for the temple of magic has been so overgrown with the lush growth of uninformed and superstitious thought throughout the ages that, in the Western world at least, its true appearance and nature has been lost. Only among the ignorant and superstitious on the one hand, and a certain nucleus of informed and instructed magicians on the other, has any idea of the true nature of magic been retained. And in the former case, that idea has been sadly distorted and bears very little relationship to the actual facts. As students of archaeology and the learned exponents of comparative religion alike inform us, magic goes back to the very beginnings of human life on this planet. All systems of religion, with the exception possibly of certain Protestant sects and the Southern Buddhists, have at some period or other in their history made use of ceremonial magic. Those who are interested in the historical aspect of the subject will find listed in the bibliography at the end of this book works by recognized experts in the field, foremost among them being Sir James Frazer, whose Golden Bow is a classic. Peace and greetings, Anamali. If these authorities are carefully studied, it will be observed that, broadly speaking, each succeeding religion assimilates the best in the religion it supersedes, and the remainder is left to the ignorant populace and to those priests of the old religion who will not conform to the new. As the new religion organizes itself, it begins to persecute the remnants of the old, and this remnant is driven underground. Take note of that. That's a huge part of magic today, as well as what we know about spiritual work. To be honest, most of these, dark side, evil spirits and demons and that whole category of stuff isn't necessarily evil in the popular sense. For the most part, all of these antagonized, demonic, evil spirits were just gods of the previous religions that have been overthrown and thrown into a general trash can. And this continues to happen all throughout human history. But it isn't simply just thrown away and forgotten in the subconscious mind of the human race. It is still useful, and it becomes useful in a different way. We'll talk more about that later, because that is essentially what has become and created the Goetia. That is what the Qliphoth is, as far as the spiritual entity aspect of it. And there's a method to that as well. I talked earlier about that liberation. Well, the gods of light certainly don't represent liberation. They represent perpetuating existence within the material plane. And these gods that have been disposed of start to become symbols that can be used towards that liberation of the soul from this incarnated matrix. More on that later in great detail. Lance Benefield says, Trev, did magic come from the primordial realm? Absolutely, but that's not the only place. Magic is what consciousness does. Veronica, peace, peace. Good to see you. Natalia Dozier, peace, peace. Marco Power says, did Bobby Hemmett not say those exact words 15 years ago? Old gods become devils. Absolutely, right? Absolutely. And when I went back to Serious Times Media and watched every single Bobby Hemmett video that I could fit into a 3-month span, I quickly realized that most people that claim to understand what Bobby said actually don't. They remember the jokes and the funny parts, but they seem to have missed the philosophy that he was teaching. But that's not my business. And why do I say that? I say that because, it can be seen in the comments and the memes and the choices of clips that people post from his 9-hour videos. Anyway, let's continue. So the gods of old are thrown away and become the new devils. Such a state of affairs arose when Christianity emerged from its infancy and became the dominant religion of the West. The old religion disintegrated and the Christian church absorbed much of its philosophy and ritual, gradually permeating all levels of society, until the only followers of the old faith were the rustics and the dwellers in outlying and isolated places. These rustics, or pagani, right, pagans, untrained in the philosophy of their religion, handed down a distorted semblance of it. Always in the background, they were often cruelly persecuted, but their numbers were constantly recruited from many sources, including those who rebelled against the papal claims. When, however, the impulse of the Renaissance began to make it possible to break the yoke of Rome, the very godly Reformed churches were as bitter as Rome had been in their persecution of witches, wizards, and magicians. The history of Europe from the 11th to the 18th century makes harrowing reading. With the emergence of the Age of Reason, popular belief in the malign power of the magician began to disappear. Concurrently, in Protestant circles at least, religious belief began to deteriorate into a formality which had very little driving force. Hollow Smoke, peace. Kevin Wise, peace and greetings, brother. Tian Pomeroy, peace, peace. Good to see you. This dead level of mediocrity in England reached its high watermark in Victorian days when physical science, in the form of one of its greatest exponents, declared, "There is no room in the universe for ghosts." And the president of the Royal Society said, "In matter I see the promise and potency of all life." But with the increasing knowledge of the universe which modern developments in science have brought, such ideas have had to be considerably revised. And the modern physicists such as Jeans, Eddington, or Einstein has propounded an idea of the nature and purpose of the universe which can readily be accepted by the magician. Allowing for the difference in terminology, he has been saying the same thing for centuries past. It is, however, with the modern school of psychology, more particularly that presentation of it which is associated with the name of Carl G. Jung, that the magician finds his closest link with modern thought. By that curious swing of the mental pendulum, first noted by Heraclitus, termed enantiodromia, that which had been repressed and driven underground now begins to flourish in the open, to the manifest dismay of the Orthodox communions. But although repressed and persecuted throughout the ages, magic never ceased to exist in the Western world. The Roman Church had skillfully adapted much of the old magic to subserve her own purposes, but behind the scenes, the magical tradition ran like one of the underground rivers of the Peak District, emerging now and then into the light of day, and then disappearing again beneath the surface. One such emergence was the Order of the Temple, whose members, the Knights Templar, have been cleared of much of the odium cast upon them by their persecutors. The Albigenses in France were another. The Brethren of the Golden and Rosy Cross, the Illuminati, the Magnetists, the Theosophists, and the numerous magical orders and fraternities which appeared in the latter half of the 19th century were others. Of these, the most famous and most illuminating from our point of view is the Order of the Golden Dawn. Founded upon an alleged Rosicrucian foundation, it brought into one magnificent synthesis all the floating magical threads, and, in spite of many vicissitudes and divisions, it still remains the fountainhead of the Western magical tradition. So much for our general survey of the magical field. Now for our definitions. My dictionary gives me the popular definition of magic: the art of applying natural causes to produce surprising results. Such a definition covers too much ground. It could be applied by a savage to the radio, the telephone, or the airplane, though such an one would probably conclude that supernatural, not natural causes were at work. A modern magician who has written extensively upon the subject has defined magic as the art of causing changes at will. Who can guess which modern magician that was? First one to get it gets a astral gold star. He said a modern magician who has written extensively upon the subject has defined magic as the art of causing changes at will. Okay, Lance Benefield says Merlin. Nope. Modern. Marco Power says Philip Cooper. Nope. This book was written in 1950 something, so I don't think Cooper was there yet. Michael Jackson. Close, but not quite. There we go. I knew somebody would get it. Organic Black says Crowley. Sunshine Chick says Aleister Crowley. Correct. I'll be sending your Astral Gold Star immediately. All right. So again, this is too wide a definition. It would include the operations of all workers, both manual and mental, who certainly produce changes at will. In the present writer's opinion, the best definition of magic is that given by another modern magician, who has defined it as the art of causing changes in consciousness at will. I don't know who said that, but I'm sure Google could tell us. Tian Pomeroy asks, who are Rosicrucians, please? I brought some Kabbalah tarot cards and the book mentions them. I've never heard of them. They are a very early secret society magical group who can be seen as the progenitors and the founders of the Golden Dawn. I don't know too much about the Order of the Rosy Cross, the Rosicrucians, but they were a magical order that was very, very early, very fundamental, within, like, I believe the late 1800s, early 1900s. If you have the book, The Kabbalistic Tarot by Robert Wang, the big blue one, he has a nice, neat little description of their influence in the first chapter. Okay. So, in the present writer's opinion, the best definition of magic is that given by another modern magician who has defined it as the art of causing changes in consciousness at will. This agrees with both the theory and practice of magic, and we may profitably employ it here, with due acknowledgments to its originator, Dion Fortune, who was, amongst other things, the warden of a well-organized magical fraternity. Greetings, Al Dickey. Tian Pomeroy says, excited for this book study. Yeah, this is a really good one. All three of these are. Hopefully we'll be able to get through all three of them. Definitely this first one, though. It's really short, like 64 pages. Having arrived at a suitable definition, we are confronted with another difficulty. What do we mean by changes in consciousness? It will be necessary then for us to consider A, what is consciousness, and B, what is meant by changes in it. In the next chapter, we will consider the modern psychological view of human personality. It must be remembered, however, that psychology is not yet sufficiently developed as a science to be hailed as a unified body of knowledge. Alex Cuckoo, peace, peace. Tam Pomeroy says, I do. That's my sign to read it. Thanks. Awesome, awesome. I knew you had it. Let's see. If I flip through. Yeah, if you read the introduction in that book, I believe they start talking about it on page 11. Yeah, 1888, I think they were. Peace, Sly. Sly says, "Hey Trav, the second one was 500 to 900 bucks. Gee whiz, these prices, man. I swear they shoot up for a good reason, I suppose. I know that there are some copies floating around. I don't know if you checked eBay, but there are some copies that are floating around for a lower price. I believe I got mine for like 50, I want to say. I think Veronica may have gifted me with that one. But yeah. So, since we've come to a definition of magic, right? Changes in consciousness, we'll have to define what is consciousness and what is meant by changes in consciousness. So he says, in the next chapter, we will consider the modern psychological view of the human personality. It must be remembered, however, that psychology is not yet sufficiently developed as a science to be hailed as a unified body of knowledge. There are several schools of psychology differing in their explanations of the observed facts. The followers of Freud place the greatest emphasis upon one aspect of life, the followers of Jung on another, the pupils of Adler upon yet another. It will be seen that the bias of the present writer is in the direction of the Jungian school. So he follows the psychology of Carl Jung at the time. As a matter of fact, the writings of Carl G. Jung are so much in line with the magical tradition that it is easy for us to understand the feeling of some of his more materialistic colleagues that he has fallen away into mysticism. The results of this falling away seems to be satisfactory from the psychotherapeutic point of view. Anyway, and it is the considered opinion of the present writer that in Jung we have the Darwin of the new psychology. One is aware that this is not an original opinion. Others have said the same, but it bears repeating. All right, chapter 2, Human Personality. I really like this chapter because I'm one of those people also who likes to analyze the psychological aspect of magic. I never really was into like having a bunch of tools, a bunch of swords and daggers and crystals and crystal balls and all that other stuff. I prefer to work with as little as possible. So I enjoy the psychological aspect of magic. Because the truth, you don't need any of those tools because they are all symbolic representatives of inner forces. And once you come to an understanding of that, you can use any and everything. In fact, the world, you realize, becomes your altar, right? Your body becomes the ceremonial tool. You become aware that your environment is an extension of the self. So if you guys are enjoying this content, please hit the like button. Oh yeah. Atropa says, the more you have, the more dust you gotta clean. Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? But the key to remember, everybody, is that all objects are merely symbolic representatives. So there is not anything, any piece of matter that is more magical than another, right? Now, if you believe that, that's what you do. That's fine, whatever. But you're allowing your consciousness to perceive a certain object as magical. It's not that the thing itself is more magical than anything else. You are doing that. You're just externalizing your power onto something else. And for most people, that is how they have to do it, right? But the more that you learn, the more that you realize that no piece of matter is more magical than another. Everything is a symbolic representative. All right, so chapter 2, the human personality. The problem of human personality is one that has remained unsolved for many centuries in the Western world. Eastern thought has evolved a classification of human personality which throws much light upon man's mental processes. But in the West, dogmatic theology has, up to recent times, limited any similar development of Occidental thought on the subject. So in case you don't know, there's two words that he uses in his books. There's Occidental and what's the other one? I don't know. Well, anyways, one of them means Eastern, like India, Asia, Middle East, that sort of thing. And then the other one means West, Europe and America. Yeah, I think it was Oriental. I think it was Oriental. Thank you, Anna Molly. So yeah, he says that Eastern thought has evolved a classification of human personality, right? And we studied Eastern thought the past couple of years as I've been digging into these books on yoga and Samkhya, right? So he says Eastern thought has evolved a classification of human personality which throws much light upon man's mental processes. But in the West, dogmatic theology has, up to recent times, limited any similar development of Occidental thought on the subject. All right, so yeah, Occidental means West, and then Oriental means East. Within recent years, however, many factors over which dogmatic religion has no control have conspired together to put forward a truer view of the real nature of the personality than that hitherto held. The old academic psychology dealt purely with the waking consciousness, and its method of research was mainly by the conscious inturning of the mind upon itself. But many facts began to emerge which pointed to the possibility that the mind of man was greater than was realized. The observed phenomena of mesmerism and hypnotism, telepathy, and the psychic marvels of the spiritualists all began to show the necessity for a new psychology, based this time upon a much broader foundation than its academic predecessor. F.W.H. Myers, in his epoch-making book, Human Personality, roughed out the general theory of what he termed the subliminal mind. The general idea, which still remains valid, was that the conscious mind was that part of the mind which was above a certain level of consciousness, which was known as the limen or the threshold. Got it? So whenever we say, and this is me, whenever we say subliminal, right? Liminal means line. It means threshold. So like he says here, there's a certain line, there's a certain limen, a certain threshold of consciousness and awareness, right? So when Myers talked about the subliminal mind in his book Human Personality, apparently that's the first time that this was mentioned, right? That's why he calls it an epoch-making book. In that book, he talked about the conscious mind was that part of the mind that is above a certain level, a certain limit, right? So we got the subconscious and the conscious mind. He says that this supraliminal or above threshold consciousness is not, however, the only level of consciousness, all right? So he's describing here the different levels of consciousness. Consciousness is extremely vast, right? And all of us mistake our present awareness for the totality of our consciousness. That's not true, right? We can only be aware of certain things at a time. With our five senses taking in unlimited, countless points of data every given second in our waking life and our sleeping life, we can only be aware of a tiny fraction of those at any time. So our awareness is not our total consciousness. It's just what we're aware of. Check. All right, let's continue. So the mind of man, according to this hypothesis, is dual. Well, let me go back. The supraliminal or above threshold consciousness is not, however, the only level of consciousness. Below the threshold, there exists other layers of consciousness, and these are termed the subliminal levels, or generally the subconscious. Yeah, let's get into it. So, the mind of man, according to this hypothesis, is dual, having a conscious or waking level and a subconscious, which remains below the threshold. Myers showed that all the various phenomena he was considering could be explained on the assumption that under certain conditions and through certain channels, the subconscious could thrust itself up and emerge into the waking life. You hear that? That's important because we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of magic. Now notice how he said here that under certain conditions and through certain channels, the subconscious could thrust itself up and emerge into the waking life. So, as above, so below, I believe that correspondence is the greatest magical principle that we have, right? So, consider the correspondence. Consider how everything relates. At the beginning of this book, we talked about how all the old religions and the old gods now become the devils and the demons of the future because they're cast into the past. They're cast into the subconscious mind of the human race. And just like we have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, and we have certain inner forces that block the subconscious from rising up, right? In Liber Null and Psychonaut, he calls that the psychic censor. In the ancient Greek, when the Titans were thrown into Tartarus, into hell, right? Tartarus was guarded by these certain entities known as the Hecatonkairs, right? They had 100 arms. They were Titans too, but their job was to keep the main Titans, who Zeus and his homeboys overthrew, keep them in the subconscious in Tartarus. So those Titans represent the primordial aspect of what we are, right? You've heard Bobby Hemmett talk about this. Those Titans represent the primordial aspect of what we are, that what is hidden and thrown away and buried in the collective subconscious mind of the human race. And the conscious mind, the gods, Zeus, the demiurge, does everything that they can, everything in their power, to keep those primordial forces from rising up again. Why? Because those are the true masters of reality. And if they become freed again, the current gods would not stand a chance. If you read the mythology, you'll find that Zeus barely beat the Titans. In fact, it was like a standstill for an extremely long time. The only way Zeus and his homies, the only way the demiurge, the only way that these gods of light were able to beat the original gods of primordial chaos was because they had to employ other entities of chaos. They had to employ their brothers to fight against them. They had to use them to destroy themselves. So if they were ever to be released from Tartarus or the Clipoth or the subconscious mind, the gods of light would have no choice but to release their power. Hence why modern Christianity and modern religions teach you that these devils and demons are evil and bad because we'll stay away from attempting to invoke these energies, these primordial energies that exist within the subconscious mind. 223 Soldier says, if as above so below is true, why don't Jews and Christians have the same influence on the astral plane as they do in this world? Is there a specific Jew and Christian you're talking about? Because I don't know all Jews and all Christians, so I don't think you do either. So we don't know what influence anyone has on astral, and I think the best subject of concern is what influence do you have on the astral plane and the physical plane? Don't worry about Jews and Christians, worry about yourself. You can't do anything about anybody else. Thank you, Sly, for your donation. I appreciate that. Lance Benefield says, "Well, my wife is having a full conversation with me while I got on headphones and trying to get this knowledge." See, that's the conscious mind trying to block the subconscious from rising up. All right, let's continue. Let's continue. Okay, so under certain conditions and through certain channels, the subconscious could thrust itself up and emerge into the waking life. He showed too that this subconscious level of the mind was much greater in its extent and potentialities than the conscious levels of the personality. In other words, what he just said there was that the subconscious mind is much greater in its extent and its potential, right, than the conscious mind. Please understand that. You can bear witness to that in your own life, right? What I love about this stuff is it's not necessarily something you have to take his word for. You can check this stuff yourself, right? You can check this stuff yourself. Lance Benefield says NLP. Exactly, right? Exactly. Now let's keep going. The simile which is usually employed is that of the iceberg, the greater part of which is hidden in the ocean. Such a simile is an excellent one, since the behavior of such a berg closely parallels the behavior of the mind. It often happens, for instance, that although the wind may be blowing from one point of the compass, listen to this, all right? It often happens, for instance, that although the wind may be blowing from one point of the compass, the berg will move majestically against it, since its great submerged bulk is actuated by ocean currents far below the surface. So it is with the mind of man. Please understand that. Right? That right there's a perfect analogy. So what he's saying is, imagine the mind as just like an iceberg, right? We know just a little bitty piece of the iceberg sticks out of the water and the massive piece is underneath it. And he says that even though the wind might be blowing in one direction, it's not going to move the iceberg. You know what moves the iceberg? The deep currents underneath the water, right? That's what moves the iceberg. That's how it is with us as well. Life happens all around us, but what really moves us are the deep currents pushing us along by the subconscious mind. Don't forget it. And it's no surprise that in certain types of magic we call them currents, right? The Typhonian current, the Draconian current, the Titanic current, right? These are deep levels of subliminal influence. Framestar Films, peace. So let's continue. Upon this new concept, a new psychology began to be built, and two men stand out as pioneers in the field. The first name is that of Sigmund Freud, and the second is that of his pupil, Carl G. Jung. Freudian psychology is familiar to the general public because of its insistence upon the sexual element in psychological disease. With this extreme view, Jung disagreed and gradually formed what is known as the Zurich School. From the magical point of view, there can be no doubt that Jung's teachings are closer to the facts than those of Freud, and it is certain aspects of his system, therefore, which I will now briefly outline. Useless familiar, peace. Welcome. I think I need a second helping of my coffee. All right. That's going. Let's continue. It is understood that behind the manifest life of both animals and humanity, there is a driving force or energy which has been given many names. By the psychologists, It is referred to as the libido, or sometimes the id. This basic urge manifests itself in what are termed the fundamental instincts. And in the usual classifications, these are held to be 3 in number, right? We're going to talk about the 3 instincts. Listen close, because this is going to line up with things that you've heard before, namely the energetic centers, right? Your chakras. So check this out. He says that this basic urge, oh yeah, this is probably my favorite chapter. This basic urge manifests itself in what are termed the fundamental instincts. And in the usual classification, these are held to be 3 in number, namely the self-preservation instinct, or the will to live, the sex instinct, or the will to create, and the herd instinct, the social urge. So check that out. Right there, he just said the 3 primary influences behind both animals and humanity, right? These are the driving forces. And that is the self-preservation will to live, that's the sex instinct, or the will to create, and that's the herd instinct, or the social urge, right? To these 3, Jung adds a 4th instinct. All right, so this is pretty cool. Remember I said the chakras. Do those first 3 I named sound like the chakra points? Well, to me they do. Lance Benefield says, Jung talked that Abrasax will come back in the end times as the Greek god Finesse. Pablo X69, peace. Jiren, peace. Supreme Chief Beezy, peace. Welcome back. So, yeah, in case you don't know, the self-preservation instinct, that would be the root chakra. The sex instinct, of course, that would be the sacral chakra. And then the will to live, the herd instinct, the social urge, that would be the Manipura chakra, right? So look what he says now. He says, to these 3, Jung adds a 4th instinct, which he claims as the prerogative of man alone, the religious instinct. This instinct is a counterpole to the 3 biological drives of the primitive instincts, and is therefore an essential part of the constitution of man. Whatever system of psychology is built up, if it lacks this essential point, they will fail to cover fully the field of human personality. Now, in the early evolution of man, the 3 great instincts predominated, though even then, the religious instinct was definitely at work. As mankind began to advance, the gradually developing conscious mind began to cut down the intensity of some of the instinctive drives and to divert their energies into new channels. But this was done in an unregulated and ignorant way, so that considerable friction occurred within man's mind. Aldiki, thank you for the donation. I appreciate you. Dendritic Fractals, peace. Dendritic Fractals says, think Leary's 8-circuit model of content. Yes. With the appearance of Christianity and the fierce reaction it evoked towards the degeneracy of the old faiths, this repression of the natural instincts became intensified and gradually became accepted as part of the Christian faith itself, until, in the Victorian period, it reached its culminating point. The conscious mind, it was affirmed, conforming to a certain ethical code, was the highest achievement of human evolution. But this has resulted in the gradual increase of what is, in the main, a disease of the Western world, psychoneurosis. There are, of course, neurotics in all races, but by far the greater number are to be found in the Western civilization. The powerful instincts being thrown back upon themselves become twisted and perverted, and the energy they should bring to the workings of the conscious mind, were they properly directed or sublimated, is lost in internal mental friction. Giving rise to that sense of frustration so common in the West. This repression of the dynamic power of the individual has resulted in the establishment of a hard line of cleavage between the subconscious and the conscious levels of the mind. Hard line of cleavage. Due to the repression of our dynamic power, the misallocation of our mental energies. Interesting. But it is obvious that only by bringing through into the conscious mind the dynamic power trapped below the threshold can the activities of man reach their true level. It is such a release of the subconscious which is aimed at in modern psychotherapy, and this also is what is attempted in modern magic. For a modern example, just think about shadow work. Think about how powerful an effect proper shadow working can have on your life, on your mind, on your world, right? Because we've got these mental energies not properly organized, and some of these mental energies are caught in loops that turn back on themselves, and they cause us to perform certain patterns, right? They cause us to perform certain activities and behaviors repetitively. Sometimes we even know that they're not good for us, but we keep doing it. It's almost as if we have no control, right? This is an example of this repressed mental energy that he's talking about, this misallocated energy. And we can see just how devastating it can be in our lives. But once you do start to take a look at those loops, those habits, those beliefs, some of that trapped and frozen energy, once we start to take a look at it and begin to dissolve it, release it, deal with it face to face, we find that after doing that, many of these negative habits and behaviors start to cease on their own. It takes time, of course, but so much better than ignoring and avoiding that type of inner work. So let's keep going. This does not mean that the primitive instincts have to be given full play in their crudest forms, but rather that the driving energy of such instincts is canalized and redirected into other channels, right? There must be, however, a natural similarity between the energy being redirected or sublimated and the new channel of expression which is offered it. An instance of this is the advice given so often to adolescents troubled with excessive sexual urges. They used to be told, go in for sports or gymnastics, etc., and work it off. Sometimes the remedy succeeded. More often it failed, having apparently increased the urge rather than decreased it. This was because a channel for the first biological drive had been used for a force belonging to the second drive. Sports are a splendid way of sublimating the self-preservation instinct, and such group associations also form a good channel for the herd instinct, but they are unsuitable for the sex instinct, which is essentially individual and creative. Nowadays, the general advice to such sufferers is to engage in the creative arts and crafts, to create, to make, even though it is only a rustic seed in their own garden. Such creative work affords an excellent channel of sublimation. Right? So quick recap of this part here and before. Look at what he said about sublimation, right? Where was it? Yeah, here. So he says that the powerful instincts being thrown back upon themselves become twisted and perverted, and the energy they should bring to the workings of the conscious mind, were they properly directed or sublimated, is lost in internal mental friction. So properly directing the energy is what he means when he says sublimating, right? Properly directing the energy. What energy are we talking about? The main three energy forces behind living creatures, mainly humans and animals, right? So we can say the root chakra, that first one is the self-preservation instinct. The second, the sacral chakra, would be the will to the sex instinct. And then the third would be the herd instinct. And what he's saying is that these natural forces exist within us and animals, and they have to be expressed properly, or else they produce internal mental friction, right? So every single person and animal has the will to live, the will to create, and the social urge. And if we don't have appropriate channels to sublimate these energies, if we don't have appropriate channels to express the will to live, the will to create, and the social urge, then those energies turn back upon us and start to cause mental friction. They start to cause mental and emotional and physical issues, right? So it's extremely important in all of our lives to have a channel for those three forces. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Lance Benefield says, I want to give an ancient magical invocation. Remember this phrase when you have a negative or around people. Fiat lux, let there be light. It's pronounced fiat lux. Thank you for that. Fiat lux. Al Dickey says, I seriously understand and feel that. Yes, yes. Kevros God, peace. Kevros God says, good evening. Just became a member and there's so many videos. I'm hooked. Yes, sir. And more to come. Framestar Films says, patching in senders calls to the wrong receivers. Right, right. So with all of us having these three energies that need to be expressed, again, it's crucial to have an appropriate channel, right? And I keep saying chakras because we know the chakras, so I think that would be a very easy way to remember it and associate it with. Because he even talks about that fourth biological drive, that fourth instinct, which is the religious instinct, and that would line up with the heart chakra, right? I mean, that's essentially what he's talking about here. Sunshine Chick says, will to live, will to create, and will to be social, right? If those three are not properly expressed, they become diseased, imbalanced. All right. So I just wanted to go back on that, which is why he was saying that for a person with a high sex drive, sports would not be the answer to that, because sports is expressing which energy, right? The will to be social, the herd instinct. A better channel for the sex drive would be art and creation, creating things. All right, so let's continue. It must not be thought that the entire energy of such instincts can be, or indeed should be, sublimated, but these basic energies should be available for the continued development of the spirit of man. It is here that the fourth instinct posited by Jung comes in, for it is the counterpole drawing the developing man up to greater heights, and we might with advantage equate this fourth drive with what the occultists call the superconscious, or the higher self, and the magician calls the holy guardian angel. So there you have it in black and white. The holy guardian angel is, of course, the same thing as the higher self, or the superconscious mind. Check. All right. Hot coffee is complete. I love this chapter, and you're going to see why. Let's keep going. Modern psychoanalytical research has pointed to the existence in the unconscious or subconscious of certain levels or layers of development. And the deeper of these levels link the individual not only with the minds of his immediate neighbors, but successively with the mental processes of all mankind down to a certain level. And below that again with the consciousness of the animal and vegetable kingdoms. It would seem that just as our physical bodies bear within their very structure the marks of their evolutionary development from the lower kingdoms of nature, so our minds show a similar line of ascent. Let me read that again. Read that again because there's a lot in here that this master magician teaches that sounds just like plain conversation. So let's go back over that one more time. Modern psychoanalytical research has pointed to the existence in the unconscious or subconscious of certain levels or layers of development. And the deeper of these levels link the individual not only with the minds of his immediate neighbors, but successively with the mental processes of all mankind down to a certain level. And below that again, with the consciousness of the animal and vegetable kingdoms. So what he's basically saying right here is that modern psychological research has pointed to the existence, right? Within your subconscious mind, the fact that there are levels and layers that go deep, right? And I've drawn a chart explaining this, right? And I even presented on this when I gave my my lecture in Atlanta 2 years back. These levels and these layers not only link us to our immediate neighbors, right, actual people around us, but these levels of the subconscious mind, yes, they're connected with the people around us. They're also connected to the human race as a whole. And it's all the layers of our subconscious mind are also connected to the animal kingdom and the vegetable kingdoms, right? There's an actual subconscious link. Science has already seen this back in the 50s and probably before that. And he says there that just like our bodies bear within them the structure and the marks of their evolutionary development from the lower kingdoms of nature, so do our minds. So basically what he's saying is that as life has evolved from the beginning to now, there are signs within that point to each one of the levels that we came from. Think about a tree, right? When you cut a tree, you see those rings inside of it, and they are able to tell the age of the tree by all those rings. Well, the mind of the human being is like that too. Throughout our evolution from the most simple life form to what we are now, going through every stage of life, from a rock mineral to a plant to every type of animal to a human, within our subconscious mind, we still have those rings within us. Right? Framestar Film says evolutionary path in alignment with our chakra system also. Yes, and I believe that's why he's laying it out like this, because if you look at that the first instinct, that first energy, the will to live, well, pretty much every living creature has that, right? Then you go up the next level to the will to create, that sexual urge. Now there's a whole new class of animals and entities, or select class of life forms that have that. Then if you move up more to the will to congregate, only a certain type of life forms have that. For example, we could even say that certain insects operate with just those first two energy centers, right? Some insects are solitary and solo and don't travel in packs and herds. ZJ says, from Greek, psyche, the soul, mind, spirit, life, one's life, the invisible animating principle or entity which occupies and directs the physical body. Yeah. All right, so let's keep going. Main point I just made there, or he just made in this book, is the fact that within the subconscious mind, we still have links to not only the other individuals in our lives, but our entire human race, and all living creatures within it. And I'm going to go ahead and jump the gun and say that that linkage is due to the fact that ultimately consciousness is one thing. Ultimately, consciousness and the soul is one giant, massive, unbelievably vast thing that we're all animated by, that we're all linked to. It's not out there somewhere. The higher self is not out there somewhere. It's within us. All right, let's keep going. There is what is termed the personal subconscious, consisting of ideas, emotions, and memories, some of which have been thrust down below the threshold because we refuse to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we were capable of such thoughts. Such groups of thought charged with emotional energy are known as complexes or constellations, and where they have been refused acknowledgement, they tend to break away from the general unity of the mind and become semi-independent. They are then said to be dissociated, and it is these dissociated complexes which result in the locking up of the psychic energy of the self. The repressed complexes and the disassociated complexes, together with all the host of forgotten experience, memories, and emotions, make up this personal subconscious. Got it? So yeah, we've got the personal subconscious, which has all your memories, all your emotions, right? All your experiences and all the things that you try not to think about, things that you refuse and reject, right? Sunshine Chick says vrittis. Absolutely. Vrittis and samskaras. For those of you who are savvy with the Samkhya, the Vedic information. So he says, deeper than this level, we come to those emotions and thoughts, those primordial images which we share with all humanity, not only present humanity, but past humanity as well. This collective unconscious is, as it were, the conditioning background of our subconscious mind, and the images and memories buried in its depths exercise an influence upon our lives, which, though unknown to the waking self, is exceedingly potent. Remember he talked about the iceberg and how the wind might blow the tip of the iceberg, but the iceberg itself doesn't move by the wind. It's moved by the currents within the deep, right? This is what he's talking about here. These primordial images that are present in the collective unconscious of present humanity and past humanity. And guess what? Future humanity too, right? We're not always just like walking around and randomly doing stuff. There's major reason to believe that there's influence from the future that echoes backward. Because the more that you remove from matter itself, the more you also start to remove from time. So these deep levels of the subconscious are removed from time and space. And we are as influenced by the past as we are influenced by the future. You ever felt like you were led to do something? You ever feel like you were drawn to something? You ever feel pulled to do something, to say something, to experience something? Time echoes backwards as well as it does forwards. It is known that the unconscious, whether personal or collective, works by means of what? Pictures or images. Boom. Speech being a comparatively recent development, right? So, like I said, if we're looking at the total humanity from past, present, and future, speech is kind of recent, right? But images and pictures, that's always been our means of communication, right? How old are some of these cave paintings and structures that we've created of stone? But we know this already. Who knows the three major ways to impact the subconscious mind? Mm-mm-mm. ZJ says the language in this book is very Jungian. Does Butler have some type of affiliation with him? Well, I mean, he was just talking about Jung on at least 3 or 4 pages that we just went through. Yes, Butler very much chose to study psychology as taught by Jung. Peace, Matthew Watson. Peace, KP. Yes, that's a good one. Framestar Film says all the aspects played out across the star constellations, conflicts, harmonies played out within us across space and time. Absolutely. Because earlier I was also talking about the Titans and Mount Olympus and Zeus and all that stuff. You know, we find them in the stars, but we also find this struggle eternally within our unconscious mind. It isn't necessarily just a battle between gods and titans. This is the story of our subconscious mind versus our conscious mind. You talk about these angels that fell from heaven. You talk about the war, and like all these major wars of every religion is the same freaking war. The same war, right? You can take my word for it. You can do your own research, right? Either way, what you're going to find is that there has been a major war that echoes throughout history. Whether we're talking about the demiurge, whether we're talking about angels falling out of heaven, whether we're talking about the Titanomachy, which is when the Titans went to war with the Olympians. We can talk about the Mahabharata, the Ramayana. All these ancient wars are the same exact war. And that is when the conscious mind arose to power. That's it. And the so-called fallen angels, the so-called devils, represents the golden age. Because if you research, you'll see that Cronus, the one Zeus's father, ruled during a golden age, right? Ruled during a golden age. And by the time Zeus took over, we started getting closer and closer to this age. That golden age was the age where the human was primarily subconscious. That's why we're not building pyramids anymore. Because we live in our awareness, which is expressed through the five senses. That's where we live right now. It's always been, okay, Dendritic Fractal says Saturn was our sun during the golden age. Guess what? Guess what another word for Saturn is? Kronos. Like I just said, Kronos was the ruler of that golden age. It's all symbolic. So these planets and these star constellations, just like Framestar said, that is the story that's played out in our collective unconsciousness. And as Bobby Hemmett used to say, when you look out in space, there's nothing out there. That's a projection of what's inside. So when they say that Saturn was the sun during the golden age, what they're actually saying was Kronos was ruling, right? Not Sol. Kronos was ruling. In other words, the subconscious mind is where our awareness was. So these fallen angels, these demons, this Goetia, the Clip-Off, all this stuff, all these different entities that were thrown away, defeated, and buried in hell, all those are representatives of the soul within the subconscious mind. Let's continue. It is known that the unconscious, whether personal or collective, works by means of pictures or images, speech being a comparatively recent development. Therefore, says Jung, who speaks in primordial images speaks as with 1,000 tongues. He grips and overpowers, and at the same time, he elevates that which he treats out of the individual and personal transitory into the sphere of the eternal. He exalts the personal lot to the lot of man, and therewith he releases in us too all those helpful forces which have ever enabled humanity to rescue itself from whatever distress and to live through the longest night. Shoot, that was the longest sentence. MC Maestro says Bifrons is the Goetic Cronus. It might be a cool project to study that project through him. That's interesting. I'd love to know more about that. I'd love to know more about that. Seriously. I've become a big fan of the Titans. Like I said, after binge watching Bobby's videos again, I realized that that was one of his main points, right? Talking about these Titans. So I started doing some research. And I come to find a lot of, I had to add some corrections to myself, and I also found a lot of things verified. Really cool. Really cool. All right, let's continue. So magic, with its roots in the immemorial past, does just this. It speaks to the subconscious mind of man through the archaic images of its symbols and rituals, and thereby produces those changes in consciousness which the magician seeks. So also it is recorded of the Lord Jesus that without a parable spake he not unto them. Mark 4:34 or something like that. It was a master psychologist that he added 2 positive affirmations which summed up the Mosaic Law. It was as a master psychologist that he added 2 positive affirmations which summed up the Mosaic Law. We may sum up all that has been said in this chapter by saying that the best modern psychological school establishes the existence of 4 levels of the mind, namely the conscious waking mind, the personal subconsciousness, the collective subconsciousness, the super consciousness, right? Right? So does everybody get that? Does everybody understand those 4 levels of the mind? The conscious waking mind, the personal subconsciousness, remember that's all your memories, that's all your experiences, that's the stuff that you try to forget, try to hide from, your samskaras, your vrittis. The collective subconsciousness, right? That's the memory of the race. The memory of the race. Anyone who's born into the human race already has this collective subconsciousness installed within them. In fact, it serves as a matrix. It serves as a nest. It serves as a medium through which the conscious mind emerges up out of, right? And then fourth, he said the super consciousness. In fact, each one of these levels emanate from each other. So we got the super conscious, which would be the soul, the higher self. We got the collective subconsciousness of the human race, which comes out of that. Then we got the personal subconscious, which comes out of the collective subconscious. Then we got the conscious mind that comes up out of the personal subconscious. KP says, can you go in depth on difference between those last 2 consciousness? Yeah, so the collective subconscious, we're talking about the history and the future of the human race. So from humanity's day 1 up to now and beyond, all the experiences that have occurred in human nature, right? From our whole evolution being in this place. The memory, it doesn't leave. It's not thrown away. It's not cast away. It's there forever. Now, it's not, we don't consciously just tap into it like willy-nilly, but it's there and it affects us. That's why when babies come out, they know how to suck the nipple, right? That's how we naturally know how to do things like eat and chew. And a big part of that memory also is how your organs function, your blood pumping on its own, your eyes blinking, you breathing. All these things are stored in that collective subconscious. All those things and more, right? And then we got the super consciousness, and what that is, that's now we're talking about the soul. Now we're talking about the higher self. Now we're talking about this overarching consciousness that has expanded way beyond just you, but includes all of life. It's the force that animates all of life. and our personal connection to it. And it is what we're trying to come into an awareness of, because the next step after that is exiting the matrix. The next step out of that is undoing your existence within the matrix. The next step of that is unbecoming, right? Unbecoming. Because when you talk about universe B, you talk about the primordial realm, not only was it before, it also hasn't happened yet. It's kind of weird. But when you go back to that state, you unexist. More on that later. All right, so all these are aspects of the one mind, but of this totality, we are normally only aware of one, the waking mind. Nevertheless, all the rest constantly affects us, so that often we find that the hidden and mysterious currents of the deeper self impel us along ways we have not consciously chosen. Once again, the image of that iceberg, right? Hey, you got the iceberg, and the wind might blow the top of that iceberg, but it doesn't move based on the wind, right? It moves based on the deep currents in the ocean. That's what moves the iceberg. So like what he just said here, nevertheless, all the rest constantly affect us. All these different levels of the mind affect us constantly, so that often we find the hidden and mysterious currents of the deeper self impel us along ways we have not consciously chosen. And by the way, this collective subconscious, that's how astrology works. Well, shit, that's how all magical stuff works. That's how tarot works. To be able consciously to become aware of the set of the hidden currents and turn them to the task of directing our life into the ways of wisdom and the paths of peace is the fervent desire of the magician. What's the desire of the magician? To be able consciously to become aware of the set of the hidden currents, right? To be consciously aware of those hidden currents that push the iceberg and to turn them to the task, right? To turn those currents to the task of directing our life into the ways of wisdom and the paths of peace. That's the fervent desire of the magician, who, looking into the depths of his being and seeing therein the spark of eternal light, which is his own true center, exclaims in the name and power of that spark, I have omnipotence at my command and eternity at my disposal. Anna says, imagine riding that iceberg line when Titanic was fresh. And check out the symbolism of the new Titan submarine. The new Titan submarine that went down and imploded, right? So here's the thing also, like, a lot of people talk about these conspiracies and the programming in the media, right? How the movies and the sports games, they show us these symbols and they're doing rituals on you don't have to go far to see people talking about stuff like that. Well, you can start to see how that works again with this collective subconsciousness, right? So if somebody puts a submarine, right, with 3 people, with 4 people, whatever, people on it, and it's called the Titan. I think it was called the Titan, wasn't it? You may not know consciously what a Titan is. You may not have links to it, but the subconscious mind does. That's why they choose these names and these symbols, because the collective subconscious of the human race knows these symbols. Like you said before, it's not so much the language and the words, it's the images, it's the symbols, right? We don't know what happened with the submarine. We don't know if it even went down. We don't know anything. But what we know is a story that is given to us, and because we have an emotional attachment to those people and what happened, now that opens up the subconscious mind to accept that influence, right? So whenever you see these movies and all these different symbols and stuff like that, you're participating in it just by witnessing it, right? Even if you're trying to wake people up and make little videos about, what's going on behind the scenes and all that other good stuff. Alpha Draconian, peace. What a creepy picture you have there. But yeah, that's how this so-called programming works, right? Because it impacts us on that collective subconsciousness level, right? Now use that to your advantage. Use that to your advantage. That's what we're doing. Images, symbols. I could have my Gucci on. I could wear my Louis Vuitton. Matthew Watson says that's the key to successful fictional writing. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But even with nothing on, I made you look. All right, chapter 3. Now we're going to wrap it up with the conclusion of chapter 3. So get ready, get ready, get ready. The magical thesis. Leaving aside all the multitudinous details which surround the subject, we will devote this chapter to a consideration of the magical theory of man and the universe. The magical tradition affirms that the universe is one, and that no part of the universe is, in essence, separate from any other part. As the poet writes, all are but parts of one stupendous whole. All that exists in the universe, therefore, is the expression of an underlying unity, which subsists through all things. All that exists in the universe, therefore, is the expression of an underlying unity, which subsists through all things. This may be condemned as mere pantheism, but it is not so in reality. For behind the subsisting unity which expresses itself in the existing universe, there is that of which this universal soul, the collective host of life and form, is but an expression. Having created the universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. We gotta go back to the Vedic. We have to, right? Because that's quite possibly our earliest collection of the truth. Having created the universe with a fragment of myself, I remain, says deity in the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. A god immanent yet also transcendent is the god of the magician. I like to think about the spider, which also creates the universe, or creates its home and its psychic radio station out of a fragment of itself. Interesting. Alpha Draconian says, yes, do you like the law of one? I do. A god immanent, yet also transcendent, is the god of the magician, right? Fausto Bali says, somebody did a ritual to hinder my abilities to manifest and hinder my trust in my power. How do I reverse that? Well, the first thing you're going to have to do is to convince yourself that this hex is not applied to you. Why do I say that? Because 75% of a curse and a hex is done by the victim themselves. Once you hear that you've been cursed and you start believing you've been cursed, your subconscious mind, like we're talking about in this book, begins to produce that reality for you. So your first step is to convince yourself that that's not true, right? Do whatever you got to do that. Next, you've got to begin symbolically showing yourself that this curse has been nullified. Now, I just gave you the easy and difficult way to do that, right? It's the easiest way. But if you don't feel strong enough to do that, I guess maybe you could contact me for some help. But my best advice to you is to convince yourself that this hex no longer applies, and be very, very steadfast on that. Also show yourself proof. All right. Veronica Archaga says, believe in yourself. Yes. MC Maestro says Jesus was quite imminent. Absolutely, right? Absolutely. Dendritic Fractal says, thanks for the stream, Travis. You're very welcome. Very welcome. Last chapter here of the night. All right, let's keep going. Alpha Draconian. That profile picture is so creepy. I love it. Staring directly into my soul. All right, where were we? Here we go. A god immanent, yet also transcendent, is the god of the magician. All right. The transcendental one, according to the magical teaching, is reflected in the waters of chaos and old night. And that reflection of the supreme, known as the Adam Kadmon, brings order out of chaos. Right? Right? You might have heard that word before. Adam Kadmon's a pretty big deal. If you got the book, The Mystical Kabbalah by Dion Fortune, if you take a look at that tree of life, you'll see the silhouette of a human. That, my friends, points to the great Adam Kadmon, or the One Soul. You know, the thing that's caught within Universe A, the thing caught within matter. The sacrificed God, the original sacrificed God. You might have heard stories of Osiris being chopped up and spread across the land. Well, the same thing happened to Purusha. There's so many different gods and deities that were sacrificed and sliced up and chopped up and spread across, right? You think, I just talked about Zeus and his father Cronus. Well, Cronus had a father called Uranus, who was the original ruler of the world, or the universe, I should say. And his consort, his wife, Matter, got a little bit tired of him and got her son to slice off Uranus's genitals. So that's what Cronus did. That's why we see Saturn with the sickle. That's why Death has the sickle as well. Cronus, the sickle, went to slice off the genitals of Uranus and became the new ruler. So you'll often see throughout history these gods being sliced up and sacrificed and spread. And by the way, the genitals landed in the ocean or something and became the new, became a goddess, Aphrodite. Which is all symbolic, God. Like, there's not people in the sky walking around cutting people's balls off. This is all symbolic, right? Because when Uranus and Gaia, Earth, matter, I should say, Prakriti, when they were together doing their thing, what she got so upset about was he was constantly impregnating her, and it was painful, right? Some of these entities lived within her and didn't come out. Well, what was actually happening here is this is the celestial, the heavens, right? Pouring down life into the material plane and giving the first forms and the first shapes, right? This is primordial existence. That's what that story represents. And when the Titans came and sliced off the genitals, Uranus, what that did was that was a representative of one age being terminated, right? And during that age was heaven directly pouring life into earth. So once that age ended, it was marked by that castration of Uranus. And it's significant that his genitals became Aphrodite, this goddess of sex and reproduction. Because what that showed now is that the time has now transitioned into a time where Those forms that were placed on earth now have to have sex together to recreate. So before that, creation literally just poured out of heaven into earth. That transition to the rule of the Titans, the Golden Age, where now beings had to procreate with themselves. So every time a god is sacrificed, the entire universe changes how it functions, and it gets more and more dense, more and more solid, more and more slow. So that was an eternity ago. The last sacrificed god was Christ, and things changed right after that. Every time a god is sacrificed, the physical plane changes. A lot. A lot. Aldin says symbolic science. They had it all figured out back then. Absolutely. Right? Because remember, before words, they had symbols. Symbols was how we communicated. So they were as proficient in their symbolic communication as we are with our English language. That's why I said in the beginning of this video and in my courses, correspondence is the greatest magical principle. If you can figure out correspondence and symbolic language, right? If you can expand your library of correspondences, this is how you build the connection between the levels of the subconscious mind. You gotta know symbolic language. And the more limited you are in symbolic language, the less you're capable of understanding, right? So if somebody tells you demiurge and you instantly think, oh, that's the devil, that's the bad guy, you've got a limited symbolic language. You got to expand that just to get to the actual message that's being communicated there. This universe is not about good versus evil. This is not about God versus devil. In fact, that's one of the tricks and traps that keep you locked and keep you from evolving, believing that there is a war between good versus evil. That's not the case, because you're still looking at the form instead of penetrating the form to look at the force. Atropa says Saturn devouring his own children. Another story for another time. Absolutely, absolutely. Kronos, the same one that castrated. And see, here's the thing: those primordial gods set a pattern in motion, as above, so below. Right? Karma. They set a pattern that the children will overthrow the father every time. So just like Cronus did that to his father, he kept eating his children so they wouldn't overthrow him, right? The same thing with Zeus, right? He knows that he will be overthrown. That's why he's done everything he can to prevent against that. That was the story of Prometheus. Prometheus told him, one of your children, one day, will develop a technology and a magic more powerful than your thunderbolts, more powerful than the trident from Poseidon, right? Will be able to break out of Hades. Your children will become more powerful than anything you've got currently to rule the universe. So beware. It's the endless cycle. As long as you exist within this plane, we're up under those rules. All right. All right. Marco Power says, crazy because the Chargers and the Titans played today. Dang, Chargers is Zeus, and then the Titans, the battle. That's really cool. Titanomachy. Marco Power says, because the consciousness of the people changes from that so-called death, more symbolic than physical. Yes, absolutely. MC Maestro says, I'd say that empires can substitute as the godly sacrifice. Yes, I can see that as well. Again, as above, so below, right? And what else is a closer representative of godly influence than the governments, right? The things that rule our mind, the governments, which also is a representative of the collective conscious. Cool stuff. Caesar, welcome back. Long time no see, buddy. Long time no see. Alpha Draconian says the whole thing, as far as I understand it, is that the god sacrificed himself to recreate itself all over again. All right, so let's continue. Let us continue. Straight Panther, what's up? Peace and greetings. Marco Power says facts, Trav. Neo versus Morpheus, Osiris versus Set, Simba versus Scar, Luke versus Darth Vader. All symbols of yourself. Precisely, my man, precisely. All right, so let's continue. Dendritic Fractal says, damn good. Strive to provide the best, my friend. Star Lion says, why did the interest in Bobby Hemmett die down all of a sudden? It exploded out of thin air in 2020 and went away quickly. Interesting. Yeah, it's been doing that. The way Bobby set his whole thing up, he's become immortalized. You know, he's become, what's the word? When you become a symbol? The word escapes me right now. Not martyr, but anyways, he's set up in such a way that people will always refer to him and always come back. There's always going to be that explosion of interest and the drifting away. I think the word is martyr. It might be martyr. I mean, he wasn't martyred, but, you know, icon, possibly. Archetype. Yeah, all those words apply. But as much as I don't approve of the gatekeeping of what do they call it? Serious Times Media. I don't approve of the gatekeeping, but as of right now, that's really the only place where you can get his videos. They used to all be on YouTube. I remember because I watched them on YouTube, but they, over the years they took them down and just give you like an hour. But I mean, if you really want to get past just, oh, Bobby's funny, I love Bobby. If you want to get past that and actually listen to what he said, it may be worth it to get their Patreon and watch those videos. You feel me? Deitized, GG Supreme. Yeah, I think that's closer to what I'm saying. Deitized, deified. That's it. All right. So, the Transcendental One, according to the magical teaching, is reflected in the waters of chaos and old night. By the way, I just talked about Zeus, whose parents were Cronus, whose parents were Uranus and Gaia. Their parents were chaos and night. Interesting here. The Transcendental One, according to the magical teaching, is reflected in the waters of chaos and old night. And that reflection of the Supreme, known as the Adam Kadmon, brings order out of chaos. As one magical ritual describes it, in the beginning was chaos and darkness and the gates of the land of night. And chaos cried aloud for unity. Then the Eternal arose. Before the brightness of that countenance, the darkness rolled back and the shadows fled away. Now this indwelling reflection, the Adam Kadmon, or the great man of the Kabbalah, is the Logos, by whom all things are made. The brightness of his glory and the express image of his person. Therefore, nothing in this universe exists except as an integral part of the Logos. All things subsist in that underlying unity, even as the Greek poet quoted by St. Paul affirms, for we also are his offspring. Right? Like I said, this is all about reflections. This is all about echoed reflections. So when we see Adam Kadmon, when we see the soul, I mean, looking at it with new eyes, what I studied now, I see this Adam Kadmon locked in and trapped within this Kabbalah, right? C Main, peace. Thank you for the donation. I appreciate that, brother. C Main says, can you speak on the water? What aspect of the water? Chaos. If you're referring to the waters that they're talking about here, we might get a little bit more into this whole thing about universe B and universe A. But essentially, there's like a void, right? Chaos. See, when the ancients talked about chaos, it's not what we think today. It don't mean like craziness and out of order and everything's just wild. No, when they're speaking of chaos, they're talking about this state of what's it called? It's like unified matter and consciousness. Like it's the word's gonna come to me. It's undifferentiated. It is homogeneous. That's it, homogenized. It's like if you have different ingredients and like you stir it up and shake it up to the point where it's like perfectly evenly distributed. When we talk about these waters of chaos, that's what it is, where everything is literally everything, evenly mixed, evenly balanced. All of existence, all of matter, and all of consciousness. So when we talk about these ancient waters, there was a point in existence where all this stuff was evenly balanced. But naturally, because we have to deal with time and space, that has to change. And one little change creates a trickle-down effect. And that trickle-down effect is what manifests as creation. And it's still happening to this day. But the thing is, it comes back around. And time is a little bit weird. We don't necessarily have to wait till the end of the universe. When you work towards enlightenment, you fast forward yourself to that state of the primordial waters. And that's what you call leaving the matrix. Marco Power, peace. Peace. Thank you for that donation, my friend. Marco Power says, I appreciate you, Trav. You've been instrumental in my spiritual growth. Appreciate that. My pleasure. Happy to help. All right. The soul of man is part of the greater universe, and in himself is a replica of it. The soul of man is part of the greater universe, and in himself is a replica of it. So it is said in magic that man is the microcosm in the macrocosm, the little universe in the greater universe. To the magician, there is no such thing as dead matter in the Victorian sense. Indeed, he holds the view that it is only because it already subsists as part of the eternal life that anything material can exist in time and space. That which we see down here as an inert block of metal is to the magician simply the material appearance of innumerable whirling centers of power, reaching back through the planes of the invisible worlds to the living heart of it all. The Spirit of the Lord filleth the earth, and to the true magician nothing is common or unclean, for all subserve the purpose and are the expressions of the life of the eternal. This is declared in the ritual by the initiated adept who cries, "There is no part of me that is not a part of the gods." Right? There is no part of me that is not a part of the gods. Like they said up here, the true magician, to the true magician now, nothing is common or unclean. So just like what I was saying earlier, as far as like there are no pieces of matter that are necessarily more magical than the other. Well, likewise, there are no pieces of matter that are less than others, right? Because ultimately it's all the same. The entire material plane is one substance. The magic comes from consciousness, not from the matter. Mm. MC Maestro says, so Trev, as part of the Western Dharma, how does this material relate to the half deity, half man, half spirit, half earth deity? I believe that Butler here is making an attempt to explain the entire philosophy of magic to a beginner in as few words as possible. And as he said in the beginning, the very beginning of this book, like on that first page, that deity that you're talking about, half man, half spirit, or half spirit, half earth, half deity, half man, that in essence is our potential. That is our higher self. That is what we strive to realize and recognize within ourselves. I am a child of the starry heavens and of the earth, or however that quote goes. So, the very, very front of this book, he says, Magic, a classic introduction to the theory and practice of magic in which the aim, here it is, the aim of the genuine magician is seen to be the realization of that true self, of which the earthly personality is but a mask. So if you were to ask me how does this material relate to that, then I would say that would be the answer, because this is an attempt to help us realize that we are that entity, that we are that. Fausto Belli says, what do you mean by consciousness? So, again, consciousness is synonymous with the soul, Now, when we say consciousness in this aspect, we're not talking about awareness, right? Because our awareness is the fact that we've got our attention pressed through our five senses, right? So we have an infinite amount of data assaulting our five senses at all times. It's impossible for our limited awareness to cognize all of that. So what we do is we single out what we can become aware of. That's our awareness. But consciousness is that plus the subconscious mind, the memories, the experiences, plus the collective unconsciousness of the history of all of humanity buried deep within your subconsciousness, plus the higher self and the soul, which extends beyond time and space. All that together and more is consciousness. So consciousness operates on levels and layers. And what we strive to do with magic is to expand our awareness to greater and greater levels and layers, so that we can be aware of not just the form that our five senses pick up, but also the force that drives the form, right? So we don't just see a book, we can see and understand the energy and the intention behind that book. We can see the future of this book and what it aims to do, right? Or any piece of matter. We don't see just the outer skin of the matter. We see what it represents in its force aspect, in its energetic aspect, in its symbolic aspect. It is through consciousness that we do that. Peace, Justin Simmons. All right, let's continue. Where we at with it? There is no part of me that is not a part of the gods. The gods. Does the magician believe in many gods? Yes, but his views on their nature are not quite what may be expected from him. He finds in the universe, visible and invisible, a mighty field in which innumerable forces play, each force being an aspect of the supreme. Very important. I'd highlight that, but I think I paid too much for this book. And in these dancing and scintillating energies, he sees units of the one life, sons of God evolved in previous universes, who, as perfect channels of the supreme power, act as living lenses through whom that power is brought down into manifestation. By the way, he said here scintillating, scintillant energies. Well, that's not just a random word. With him obviously being connected to the Unfortunate and the Golden Dawn, maybe somebody here knows it, maybe not, but the paths, the 22 paths of the Tree of Life, have their code names, and the Unfortunate told us about these. One of them is the path of scintillating intelligence. Does anybody know which path that is? The scintillating intelligence. Peace, the age of divine jewel. Here we go. No, it's not the devil. Here it is. So, 32 paths of wisdom. The 11th path is the scintillating intelligence. See that? Scintillating intelligence. Because it is the essence of that curtain which is placed close to the order of the disposition. And this is a special dignity given to it that it may be able to stand before the face of the cause of causes. So that represents the first path from Kether to Chokmah. That's a certain type of energy transmission. That's a certain type, that's a certain state of consciousness descending into matter, right? That's the 11th path, that's the Fool card. It's called the scintillating intelligence. So let's go back and read that sentence and see how that plays in. So he says, the gods, does the magician believe in... Now remember, that's the path from Kether to Chokmah. So hopefully you know your symbology about Kether and Chokmah. And I also mentioned the legend or the mythology of Uranus pouring his seed into Mother Gaia constantly, too much, right? To the point that she wasn't having it anymore. She wanted to cut his junk off because he's pouring into her so much that she can't stand it anymore. Well, again, these are not people in the sky. This is a representative of a state of existence. Kether pouring into Chokmah, right? Pouring into Bina. And it is at Bina, which also represents Saturn, that sickle slices off the genitals of Uranus, right? All this stuff ties in together. That's why I'm saying it. But anyway, scintillating intelligence. The gods. Does the magician believe in many gods? Yes, but his views on their nature are not quite what may be expected of him. He finds in the universe, visible and invisible, a mighty field in which innumerable forces play, each force being an aspect of the supreme. And in these dancing and scintillant energies, he sees units of the one life, sons of God, evolved in previous universes, who as perfect channels of supreme power act as living lenses through whom that power is brought down into manifestation. So in a way, he just described the process of Kether going into Chokmah. And notice how he talks about he sees units of the one life, sons of God, evolved in previous universes. Previous universes, right? So keep in mind, when you look at the Tree of Life and the Clip-Off, they're not, it's not upside down. The clip-off is not like upside down. It's side by side with the tree of life, right? It's side by side. So above the kether of the main tree and the backside of the tree are the three layers of the Ein Sof and Ein Sof are. And above that is what Bobby Hemmett described as Universe B. So as this stuff trickles down into our existence, many forms fall down into the abyss and are kept and held in the clip-off. This reality is not the first time that this has happened. Just like those gods that were sacrificed, each one of those sacrifices of those gods represents a major shift in existence in the universe. You feel me? You got to make sure all this stuff connects. Matt Bear, peace. If you guys are enjoying this book read, I hope you're enjoying it. If not, I don't know why you're here, but hit the like button. Hit the like button if you're enjoying this content. And I appreciate you for being here. I'm a big fan of this author. I have all his books. And I think that he is one of the best teachers I've seen. You know, you can tell mastery when a teacher's able to simplify this stuff, in the words of Bobby Hemmett, to a slit malt liquor level. Even if you high, you can get this shit. I love it. All right, so let's continue. And in these dancing and scintillant energies, he sees units of the one life, sons of God, evolved in previous universes, who as perfect channels of the supreme power act as living lenses through whom that power is brought down into manifestation. They are the Dhyan Kohans of Eastern scriptures, the ministers of flames of fire of the Bible, and that ray of their essential being which flows from the unity and is refocused in time and space is the substance in the theological sense, which is the real universe. The real universe. And which manifests the secondary qualities that we call matter, the accidents of theology. Universe B. Universe B. Atropa says, oh, I thought it was more like the roots of the tree, the clip-off. Thanks for clarifying, Travis. So here's the thing. It can be seen as that still, right? It is still, but it's not physical, like conceptually, it's not underneath like roots like that. It's more like behind it, right? Instead of it going from down to up, it's coming from back to front. See, I used to believe that the shells were just emptiness that had to be filled with life. I had the wrong idea. They aren't merely shells that have to be filled with life. It's more like, more like you bury a seed in the ground. That seed has to split open, and everything inside of it has to be transformed into the actual plant. That shell is left behind. So, in a way, the clip-off was first. So it's not a shell that has to be filled with life. It is the shell that gave birth to life. Stuffed Dog, peace, brother, peace. Good to see you. Stuffed Dog says, what's good, my people? This was a great read. I love Butler. What's good, Trav? Good to hear from you. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. 2 more pages left. Thus, in the magical philosophy, there is no dichotomy between spirit and matter. There is no such thing as dead matter per se. All material existence, all manifestation is but the expression of the all-pervading life. Indeed, it is that life in one of its innumerable modes of being. Believing thus in the life structure of the universe, the magician holds that just as the power of the unity is manifest through those his ministers, so in the descending or densifying modes of his self expression, innumerable hosts of lesser intelligences carry out his plan. Angels and archangels, thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, cherubim and seraphim, Asham, and all the ageless hosts of heaven, each in his degree. Those names should sound familiar, right? Those names should sound familiar. If they don't sound familiar, let me count them for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? Right? MC Maestro says the tree of life only holds a limited amount. The Clipoth holds what can be in those Sephirah at the appropriate time. Hell yeah. Especially since time, when it's removed, maybe a better way to say it is the living individual has is the determining factor of what fills these shells. Marco Power says female reproductive organs are in the dark. Male reproductive organs are in the light. Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way. MC Maestro says the Sephirah we can see as the stage. The Clipoth is the actors, props, and set pieces. Sephirah are the toys on the table. Clipoth is the old toy chest. Sounds like content and context. Ray Blackstorm says, Clipoth, and peace, Ray Blackstorm. Clipoth are the roots of you and everything in life that emerges as Tree of Life Sephirah. It's the force. Stuff Dog, did you ever get a hold of those Kenneth Grant books? I've been working on a podcast, and I'm going to be interviewing people who I know work with magic, just to kind of share their perspective. And there's quite a few people here in this chat that I'd love to have on that podcast. Ray Blackstorm, I was definitely considering you. MC Maestro, you know I have to talk to you about this. I think I mentioned something yesterday about what you sent me. But yeah, stay tuned for that. And if you think that you'd be a good fit to share your magical journey on my podcast coming soon, feel free to get in touch with me. I think we're kind of booked up as far as guests for the next 2 months or so. But yeah, like I said, if you're interested in being on that podcast, let me know. But if you just want to listen to it, that's cool too. So yeah, those 10 classes right there, of course, are the classes of angels associated with the Tree of Life, right? The magician, seeing how the Supreme has constituted the services of angels and men in a wondrous order, sees himself not as a stranger in the universe, not even as a separate being apart from it, but as part of that living diversity in unity, and says with the Greek initiate of old, there it is, I am a child of earth, but my race is from the starry heavens. I am a child of earth, but my race is from the starry heavens. keep in mind what he said about that subconscious mind and the different layers, and how at one layer there's a connection to the entire human race, right? Now, if you're a child of the earth, but your race is from the starry heavens, that means that at a deep enough level in that subconscious mind, you are still connected to those titans, to those primordial gods. You better get with it. You better get with it. All right, let's keep going. Turning from the vision of the heavenly places, he sees himself in Malkuth, the kingdom of earth, and realizes that this imperfect, frustrated existence in the physical body is imperfect and frustrated because, although he may know by the intellect of the realities behind the appearances, he has not yet been able to realize this truth in the physical world. Let me read that again. Turning from the vision of the heavenly places, he sees himself in Malkuth, right? This is where we are now. He sees himself in Malkuth, the kingdom of earth, and realizes, and by the way, this Malkuth, the kingdom of earth, is not a physical place only, right? These Sephiroth, I talked to some people before, and there's a lot of people who think that these Sephiroth are physical places that you have to actually go, or even conceptual places that you go. That's not necessarily the most accurate way to talk about this. Malkuth, the kingdom of earth, is what I was describing earlier as far as your awareness being pressed into your five senses of perception. The Indriyas are what the Vedics talk about here, right? The Indriyas. But that kingdom of Malkuth is you living in the five senses only. That's you living through your eyes, your ears, your mouth, nose, your skin, right? That is the kingdom of Malkuth, being only aware of that as a reality, right? That's Malkuth, not necessarily planet Earth, because look, there is a Malkuth of every Sephiroth and beyond. So you're not gonna go to Chesed or you know, Tifereth. No. Those are layers. Right? That's why Yesod represents the imagination. Because what's right behind the five senses? The mind that perceives and interprets those senses. Right? And when we talk about this perception, drawing within, going beyond the level of the five senses, you now enter to that realm of imagination, right? And if you continue going back up that tree, you're going to make it to that level of Kether, spirit pouring right down constantly. And there's even a way to go beyond that. But the thing is, like Dion Fortune said, once you start getting to those levels, you're not coming back. And in my understanding, I believe you erase yourself from history. You erase yourself completely, which is desirable. Anamali says Titans equal subconscious. You can say that. You could also say that Tartarus is the subconscious, and the Titans are imprisoned in Tartarus, right? In fact, according to the mythology, when we all die, we go down into Tartarus, right? So the subconscious mind is much bigger than just your personal influences. It's a state of existence. It's a state of existence. Starlion says it must be extremely difficult being a teacher of the occult because there's so much to navigate through. Even basics can have double meanings. Wish me luck, fam. LOL. Yeah. And the best way to do this is to find the connections, find what links together. It is a lot of information, but when you see the patterns, when you start to notice the patterns, every new thing that you learn goes into a category. So this occult science isn't just a bunch of remembering random facts. This is more like having a dresser, and you know that you put your underwear and socks in this drawer, you put your shirts in this drawer, you put your pants in this drawer, right? And you put some other stuff in the bottom drawer. That's more what it's like. So every new thing you learn, once you learn to place it in its proper place, you only expand on how you can teach. It isn't really necessary to teach everything. It's only necessary to learn the patterns. Then you can automatically understand everything else. KP says, and you grab what you need when you need it. Precisely. Precisely. So that's a better way to think of the occult. Not so much just accumulating data, but understanding these patterns. And it's all symbolic. Listen to what Butler's saying here. He is a high-level teacher. Despite how it's written, despite him, actually being a Catholic priest and all that good stuff, he actually knows his magic. Marco Power, you can email me at travismages777@gmail.com. No periods or nothing. Just travismages777@gmail.com. All right. Again, 2 more pages. Okay. Know thyself. Nothi se aton. So, one more time. Turning from the vision of the heavenly places, he sees himself in Malkuth, the kingdom of earth, and realizes that this imperfect, frustrated existence in the physical body is imperfect and frustrated because, although he may know by the intellect of the realities behind the appearances, he has not yet been able to realize this truth in the physical world. Right? Know ye not that ye are gods, says the Christian scripture. And a modern poet has sung, know this, O man, sole root of fault in thee is not to know thine own divinity. Over the temple of the oracle in ancient days was carved this inscription, Nothi se auton, know thyself, right? That's Greek. It is the realization of the true nature of the self, which is the aim of the true magician. Let me say that again. It is the realization of the true nature of the self, which is the aim of the true magician. That's the whole point. Know thyself. Realizing the true nature of self. Know ye not that ye are gods. Atropa says, I gotta break the habit of stuffing shirts, pants, socks into one drawer and wonder why I can't find things quickly. Yeah. It's a lot better when you, allocate and separate. You got the chaos drawer going on, back to the primordial state. But truly the primordial state would be that the clothes and the dresser would all be jumbled up into one soup. Lasange Descote, peace, greetings, good to see you. I see your name every day. That's awesome. Following this principle and gazing within himself, the magician beholds a fallen world. He sees that the primal plan upon which man is formed is there, shining through the whole universe as the supreme harmony and beauty. Tifereth, right? And in this light, he sees the ideal in which his personal self is rooted and by which it is sustained. Then, looking outwards, he sees in his own nature and in the natures of those around him the evidence of a fall from the potential perfection. But in the midst of this fall, he sees the evidence of a return. Evidence, you see that? He sees an evidence of a return, and through the sufferings of myriad lives, he realizes that the way of salvation is the way of sacrifice. Stuff Dog says, not only are the clothes jumbled up in the closet in the primordial state, but the lights are also off. Right, right. So that's looking inwards. Then, looking outwards, he sees in his own nature and in the natures of those around him the evidence of a fall from the potential perfection. But in the midst of this fall, he sees the evidence of a return. And through the sufferings of myriad lives, he realizes that the way of salvation is the way of sacrifice. Starlion says, salvation from what? Well, that's the thing. Salvation from consciousness being entangled within matter. The whole reason we have this whole thing going on here is because the soul has taken its awareness and placed it upon matter. That in itself echoes and mirrors infinitely, right? So the soul, or we could say Uranus and Gaia, right? Like the myth that I said before. Your awareness is so placed on matter that you begin to identify with it and you think that you're matter. So that reflects down and it creates the causal plane. That reflects down and it creates the mental plane. That reflects down and it creates the astral plane. That reflects down and degenerates and creates the etheric plane. And that reflects down and degenerates even more and creates time and space and the material plane. So again, the pattern, but at different levels. So the very same way that your attention is focused on my voice with your ears, on this page with your eyes, right? Whatever feeling, sensation you're feeling on your skin, your five senses and your awareness is focused on that. That's happening on a massive major scale. The soul, the ultimate consciousness, is focused on matter. So what has to happen is we have to reverse that process. In the Tree of Life, another symbol for that scintillating intelligence, the Fool leaving Kether and going into Chesed, another symbol of that is God itself looking into an ocean, a pond, and seeing his reflection. And that moment of him seeing himself infinitely echoes, right? Just God seeing himself reflected in matter instantly creates all of existence. So when he talks about salvation, the ultimate salvation is turning away from that reflection, and unbecoming. That's why I said at the end of the day, you delete yourself, you erase yourself from existence. Because if you don't do that, you continue to exist. And if you continue to exist, you will continue to endure what they call the wheel of samsara. You continue to endure incarnation and limited existence. You keep reincarnating. You keep suffering. You keep having this belief that you're separate or separated and fragmented. And it's incredibly difficult, right? Look at how difficult it is for you to just sit down and meditate for 30 minutes. Look how much effort you have to put into just finally sitting down and actually meditating, right? If you think that's hard, imagine soul detaching from matter, right? But that takes a while, just like what he said here, right? He said, through the sufferings of myriad lives, right? So it takes more than one lifetime. However, if you're here, if you're hearing this message, if you're having these thoughts, right? If you're on this path, then you've been through these sufferings enough to start looking in the right direction, right? And look at what you just said there, Starlion. You said my every fiber fights against meditation. Check that out. What is fighting? What is fighting? It's matter that is resisting. It's matter that's putting up that resistance. It's because consciousness believes that it's matter. And it does not want to be still, because being still means you have to draw your attention away from what it knows, the five senses. Right? That right there is that's what he means salvation from. Salvation from that. All right, let's keep going. So he formulates the old Hermetic axiom, solve et coagula, which may be rendered as dissolve and reform. And so he uses the rites of the high magic to effect both that dissolution and that reformation, right? Remember I said the difference between low magic and high magic? And I said that low magic was unification with the higher self and a certain level of command over the elemental forces, over the celestial forces, and over the infernal forces, right? We'll get into that. Don't worry, I'm prepared to talk about all that stuff for the next couple months, because that's what time it is. But that's low magic, right? And then high magic deals with destiny, like I said, and ultimately removing yourself from this story, deleting your entire existence across all timelines, all multiverses, getting the hell up out of here. Dissolve and reform. And so he uses the rites of high magic to effect both that dissolution and that reformation. Feel me? All right. But what is dissolved and what is reformed? Not that eternal spark which lighteth every man. Rather, it is the personal self which he has for so long regarded as his only real self. This personality which he has so tenaciously clung to and defended, has pampered and indulged. It is this persona, this mask of the real man, which must be dissolved and reformed, right? So you've got multiple aspects of yourself. You got your physical body, you got your etheric body, you got your astral body, your mental body, your causal body. This solve et coagula, you've seen that on Baphomet's arms, right? You see on one arm solve, one arm coagula, dissolve and reform. What's he talking about, right? So often we see these images but don't think or dig deep into them. We just accept them and say, oh, you know, I'm dark side magic. I got this Baphomet statue or this Baphomet picture on my profile. What he's talking about, as above, so below, right? There's so much buried in that image. But what he's saying there is each one of those bodies, each one of those selves, each one of those levels have to be dissolved and reformed, right? That's the only way to ascend up that ladder, is to dissolve and reform each step along the way. So you start with your physical body. Then you begin working on your ego, just like what Garrett Patterson said, right? You solve et coagula your imagination, right? You solve et coagula your astral body. I've learned that lucid dreaming, that's not an option. That's necessary for this thing. That's necessary for you're supposed to be able to command awareness in your dreams. Like that is a step on the ladder. And it always has been. There's a book called the Tibetan Yoga of Dream and Sleep, right? It's an orange book. Get that book. We're probably going to go into it soon. I'm not going to read it, at least not yet, but on live, that is. All right, let's keep going. But how shall that which is itself imperfect produce perfection? Nature, unaided, fails, said the old alchemists. And in the scriptures we read, except the Lord build the house, the workman worketh in vain. So the magician, in all humility, seeks the knowledge and conversation of his holy guardian angel, that true self of which his earthly personality is but the mask. That's why the goal is to have this unification with the higher self, so that we can correctly solve and coagula, so that we can correctly dissolve the false self and rebuild the true self, or at least I should say rebuild the form of the true self, rebuild the representation of the true self, because that's what you are. Your body, your ego, your imagination, all that stuff is a representation of the true self. You feel me? You feel me? MC Maestro says L. Michael Hall's source books are great for solving and coagulating. Absolutely. Absolutely. Love that guy. Louis, peace. Peace and greetings. Matthew Watson says that's the first exercise in the gold book, basically. Exactly. It's so important. Pork Hill, peace. Naga Olmec Chaos, peace, peace. Naga Olmec Chaos says, been a minute since I've been on the live. I ain't forget how fire Travis is. 100. Star Lion says, do you think imagination is God? Well, a better question is, do you think imagination is God? Because we've been talking about God this whole time. All right, so in the very beginning of this book, he says the what we're doing here as a magus is coming into a unity with this higher self, right? And how else can we rebuild our house? Except the Lord build the house, the workman worketh in vain, right? We must have this connection before we can go any higher. Now, this is the supreme aim of the magician. All else, spells and charms, rituals and circles, swords, wands, and fumigations, right? Everything you see on TikTok and whatnot, all are but the means by which he may accomplish that end. Then, being united with that true self, if only for a brief time, he is instructed by that inner ruler in that higher magic, which will one day bring up his manhood into his godhood, and will achieve that which the true mysteries have ever declared to be the true end of man, deification. One more time. Being united with that true self, if only for a brief time, he is instructed by that inner ruler, right? Not YouTube teacher. You come into contact with your higher self and you become instructed by that inner ruler. In what? In that higher magic, which will one day bring up his manhood into his godhood, and will achieve that which the true mysteries have ever declared to be the true end of man, deification. That's the end result. Know ye not that ye are gods. The end result of, see, magic is a school. Magic is a program. It's just like a college program. Graduation is deification. Deification. He says all that other stuff, spells and charms and rituals and circles and all that other stuff, they're means to accomplish the end, right? Your tarot cards are for tarot readings, right? Your rituals for good luck and money is for the good luck and money, but it stops there. The real deal Holyfield is realizing that you are God. Framestar Film says, if equipped with what we know on this chat and not be in the habit of sharing it in the service of others, you might well be sent back to be a teacher. Sharing is caring for those who with the ears. Those of you who are with the ears, let them, for he who has an ear, let him hear what the framed star is saying to the churches. Marco Power says ego, 271854, ritual, 278145. One of the biggest and best rituals you do is killing the ego. That's one way to phrase it, yes. Dissolving and reforming, solve et coagula of the ego. Starlion says, what's the first thing you do when you become a god? I'd stop doing, right? Because that's the whole point. Doing, see, here's the thing. Doing creates a chain reaction, right? Cause and effect. And being in the world of doing, you're still limited. You're limited to the repercussions of doing, right? Cause and effect. There's two states. There's doing and there's being. So I'd stop doing and I'd focus on being. Because if you notice, the God of this world doesn't do anything. He said it already. I did it already. What's happening? According to the Bible, after that seventh day, God stopped doing and focused on being only. Being. That's not merely just, something written down for no reason. In the East, in the Oriental stuff, right, in the Vedic stuff, it talks about karma, right, and a big part of this ascension of knowledge is undoing the karma, right, and to stop making new karma, and that has everything to do with your attachment to your actions. You dig? Stuffed Dog says, man, I missed this gatherings of the meta minds. What's the official days for the meta meetings, my G? I'm bringing them back on Thursdays, man. Bringing them back on Thursdays. I was going to do it this Thursday, but getting back into the swing of it. You know how, like, say, if you stop going to the gym or you stop practicing, you got to kind of rev that engine back up so you can get back on it, you know. I've been off the live streams and the book reads for so long. Got to kind of rev myself back into it. But yes, Thursdays. And I'm thinking for the membership, I'm also going to come back to doing the Sundays, at least the short Sundays for like question and answer or office hours, as they say. But once I solidify that, I'll post it. Ah, that's a good point. Starlion says, Marco Power, all those numbers are 9. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Peace, naturally natured. Divine Ultra Instinct says, what's your thoughts on negative emotions and just being in it, overcoming shame to align instead of doing, because the more you do, the worse it gets? So yeah, that has everything to do with your beliefs. Everything to do with the beliefs. You experience those feelings because you believe that when you see this reaction, you label it as something to be ashamed of or something to be detrimental to you, right? So if you go to the root of that and change those beliefs, find new evidence, right? If you're saying that when this happens, it means this to me, and that gives you those negative emotions. What you have to do to change that is whenever you see that same thing, change the belief, right? Perhaps it means something else. Maybe it doesn't mean shame. Maybe it doesn't mean failure. Maybe it means a different way, right? If you can change the beliefs around what causes you to feel a certain way, that'll be the quickest way to begin to turn those negative emotions into something useful. Garrett Patterson says, I tried to change the world, came back here. Yeah, man. L Dub, peace. L Dub says, "Thanks for this, Trev. I still feel like I'm in a high-end vehicle, but I don't know how to work all the accessories yet. But it's a wonderful ride. Beautiful. Yes, sir." Mad Bear says, "I'll be back every Thursday." Right on. Naga Olmec Chaos says, "People seem to think that karma is merely cause and effect." Yeah. Good stuff. All right, guys. I hope that you're enjoying this book. We'll get back to it next Saturday, right? It was supposed to be yesterday, but like I said, my homie was having a gender reveal, and I was invited last minute, and the after party got a little bit messy, so I was not fit to do a book read. But we did it now, and I think it came out just right. Just right. So no gender reveal, no baby shower next Saturday, so we should be right on time, in our right mind. But before that, I suppose I'll see you guys on Thursday. Yes, yes, y'all, and you don't stop. All right, guys, this was fun. I always enjoy it, and I'm glad to be back in business, so to speak. Violet Moon says, "Oh, I thought you meant they were revealing their gender." It's this thing that people do nowadays where they find, I guess the wife knows or something. Yeah, of course, the woman would know. And they do with, like, you might have seen it in social media where they might have balloons, and like you pop the balloon, and if it's like blue, it's a boy. If pink comes out, then it's a girl. Well, they had a cake, and the father cut the cake, and turned out to be blue. So there we go. I think that's mostly a woman thing, mostly for the mother, the women in the family. Good food though, big fat shrimps. And other things. All right, guys. Appreciate you all. Hit the like button on your way out if you did not already. This was a great stream. We're going to continue. This book is actually short, so in 2 weeks we'll be finished with it, and we're going to jump right into the next one. All right? So hopefully you guys fall in love with this author's teaching style, because you'll see why I chose to read all 3 of these books on this live stream. Plus, they're actually rare and out of print, so this might be the only opportunity you'd have to get this information. And like I said, at the very beginning of this book, it does not say you cannot read it on the internet. It doesn't say that. So can't have a situation like that dude tried to press me about the Ladder of Lights book read. And that fellow probably didn't practice a lick of magic in his personal life. All right, so yeah, that's it. That's it. We are good to go. Good to go, good to go, good to go, good to go. This has been a fun experience. All right, see y'all next time. So this is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Love you guys. Peace.